Hey everyone, it's Triple Mango Threat, and today we're going over the Quantum Quandrix Precon upgrades. These are the 10 cards I would take out and the 10 cards I would add to the deck only for $40. Let's jump right into it. Starting with our commander, it's Adrix and Nev Twincasters for 2 green and blue. It's a 2/2 Merfolk Wizard with Ward 2, which means whenever this creature becomes the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, counter it unless they pay 2 mana. And finally, what everybody's freaking out about is if one or more tokens would be created under your control, twice that many tokens are created instead. So this is an Anointed Procession on our commander, and it's green and blue, so we're not having to add white to it. This really is an amazing commander, but let's get into the cards I'm going to add for the deck. I noticed this deck actually had a little bit less ramp than I wanted it to. It had 8 when I normally want around 10, so I added a card like Awakening Zone. At the beginning of our upkeep, we're going to create a 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn, and it has sacrifice this creature, add a colorless mana. This is really helpful because every turn we're adding an additional mana, and if we have our commander out, that's 2 more mana each turn. This can get insane really quick. And then we also have Cultivate, which is just a classic commander ramp spell. We're going to grab 2 basics from our library, put 1 on the battlefield tapped and 1 into our hand. We can't do anything crazy with our commander with this, but it's just a great ramp spell. And I also wanted to upgrade the lands a little bit because commander decks always need upgrades to their lands. So we have cards like Flooded Grove, Hinterland Harbor, and Botanical Sanctum. These are going to be a little bit better than just our lands entering tapped and gaining 1 life. And we can also have them even enter untapped sometimes if they meet the requirements. And then we have the double-sided land, which is Bark Channel Pathway and Tide Channel Pathway. This is really beautiful as a full art, but if we want to play this card, we have to choose one side and then it stays either green or blue. But again, this is another great option to upgrade our lands. Now, if we want a huge amount of tokens, I really recommend a Rasta of Endless Web for 2 green. It's a 3/5 spider. It has reach, but more importantly, whenever an opponent casts an instant or sorcery spell, we're going to create a 1/2 green spider creature token with reach. So every time they cast Cultivate or whatever instant or sorcery, we're going to create 2 of these creatures with our commander. And we have Scute Swarm. Whenever we play a land, we normally create a 1/1 green insect, and if we have 6 or more lands, we're going to create a copy of Scute Swarm. Well, with our commander, we can create 2 insects, or we can create 2 copies of Scute Swarm, and this gets insane really quick. Second Harvest, we can create a copy of each token we control, and so this means we can create twice that many with our commander, only for 4 mana, and it's an instant, which is really helpful. We can do this in response to something, like our opponent's attacking, and before we declare blocks, we can make a huge amount of tokens and make a big difference in the game. The last card I want to mention, and really the big hitter in the deck, is going to be Sandworm Convergence for 6 green. It's an enchantment. Creatures with flying can't attack you or planeswalkers you control. There is a planeswalker that does come in the deck, but most importantly, our opponents can't attack us with flying creatures. And even better, at the beginning of your end step, create a 5/5 green worm creature token. Now, just by itself, I think this is really good, but with our commander, we're creating 10 power at our end step. This is so good. Now, moving on to the cards I would remove from the deck, it had this secondary theme of a lot of +1/+1 counters, which is not the way I wanted to build this deck. I want to make as many tokens as possible, so I want to get rid of Arashi the Sky Asunder. I think this was kind of a board wipe, but I just didn't see a lot of synergy with the deck, because it only worked on creatures with flying, and you had to pay X and discard it to deal X damage to each creature, or pay X and green and tap it to deal X damage to target creature with flying. I just thought this was too focused on creatures with flying. Next is Biomathematician. When it enters the battlefield, we create a fractal, and then we can put a +1/+1 counter on each fractal. Well, this isn't a fractal tribal deck, so I thought this was another one that I could get rid of. Next is Forgotten Ancient. This is a great commander card, but again, I'm not focused on those +1/+1 counters. I want to make a bunch more tokens. Incubation Druid. We can tap it and add 1 mana of any type that a land we control could produce, and if it has a +1/+1 counter on it, we're going to add 3 mana. I thought this was really heavily dependent on those counters, so I didn't think it would go well with the deck. Cassetto Orochi Archmage. We can pay a green and a blue to give target creature unblockable, and if it's a snake, it gets +2/+2. I don't want to pay 2 mana for 1 creature to be unblockable. If I have a huge amount of creatures, I don't need them to be unblockable. I don't need to pay 2 mana for each 10 creatures I have. That's 20 mana I could be using for another huge spell. As for the lands I'm taking out, we have Llanowar Reborn, Lumbering Falls, Opal Palace, and Oron Reef of Vastwood. Llanowar Reborn makes it where when the land enters, we can put a +1/+1 counter on it, and when a creature enters the battlefield, we can move that counter over to that creature. But it enters tapped whenever the lands we're replacing it with can enter untapped, and we can add mana immediately. And again, we're not focused on that counter tribal. Lumbering Falls can can be a really good card, but I think it would be very beneficial if we had counters to put on this land, which is not the way we're going with this deck. Opal Palace, again, we're putting counters on our commander for how many times we've cast it, and I don't really care for that. Oran Reef can be really good, but it only gives +1/+1 counters on each green creature that entered the battlefield this turn. So if we're making a lot of green creature tokens, which we are, we can put +1/+1 counters on it, but I just want a huge amount of tokens. And last we have Plaxcaster Frogling. It has Graft 3, and we can pay 2 to give target creature with a +1/+1 counter on it Shroud until end of turn, which is really nice. Shroud is really important in Commander, and for 2 mana, that can be really helpful. But again, we're not focusing on the counterpart of this deck. Thank you all so much for watching. If you'd like any of these upgrades, you can use the link below to purchase these, and you're going to help out the channel at no additional cost to you. If you'd like to become a patron, you can receive rewards for doing so, like a signed card or a personal deck tech video made just for you. If you like this video, hit that thumbs up button and comment below what you think of the upgrades, and subscribe for more Mango content. I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.